It's time for NuWellness TV with Dr. Lee. Join your host, the accomplished Dr. Cherilyn Lee, as she welcomes the leading experts in health and well-being as they explore the advancements in natural health, physical fitness, nutrition, integrative medicine, and self-discovery.
Good morning, or whatever time of day you're listening to this wonderful broadcast. I want to thank UBN and then most important, my producer over here that works so hard, Jarvis. But we're going to have a wonderful show for you today, and I'm just so grateful that I have one of the leading experts in the field of what she is going to be bringing to you. As I stated, if you received my email blast about the show today, please have pen and paper ready, because my guest is going to give you such wonderful, powerful tools today to help you for the rest of your life. And that's what's so important right now. We have to go deep within in order to heal. This is something I do every day with my patients, and I'm so glad that I am grateful that I have a colleague that's in the healing business emotionally. So without further ado, our topic today is let's unpack your emotional suitcase. And some people is several suitcases. Well, let's unpack your emotional suitcase of life that no longer supports you. No longer support you so that you can move forward in life. This is a very powerful show, and that's a very powerful title. And I love that. So my guest, without further ado, is Barbara Crawford. And I am so happy to have you here. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I'm super excited.
Yes. So, we're just going to jump right in, and I'm going to have you to tell me a little bit more about you.
Okay. I've always been a speaker since forever, from a Weight Watcher leader, my own company, Positive Body Images, Loving Yourself Healthy. And then I went through a divorce, which caused a lot of inner checking and reviewing what was working and not working in my life. And what I discovered was there was a lot of baggage that I was dragging. In fact, I call it my freight train of things that no longer supported me in my relationships with my family or with what I wanted to do with my life. So I started a company called Spotted Zebras and Live Outside Your Stripes, Limiting Beliefs and Comfort Zones.
Now, say that a little slower. What did you start first? Say that again.
Spotted Zebras. And I had of the sisterhood, but then my male coaching clients were like, wait, don't we have a brotherhood? So I had male groups and female groups about living outside your stripes of limiting beliefs and comfort zones, and to really live an effortless and energized life. I wanted to have this for everyone because I was discovering it.
Yes.
And then that led me to working with individuals who had trauma and horrific situations in their life, parents of murdered children, victims of violent crime. And what happened was my company started changing over to then working with the military. And I realized as I asked my clients, as I was working with PTSD and family trauma and things like that, that I asked them, what did you receive from the coaching? What have you learned? And they said emotional self-sufficiency. So I shifted my company to that.
Powerful.
Because they said now when I'm in a situation and let's say they have a moment where there's a loud bang in a store, instead of hitting the deck, my troops with PTSD would then be able to just breathe through and use the techniques and the tools I taught them to bring themselves back to center and to be neutral and not reactive. Yes. And then the really interesting thing was, the more they applied the tools on their everyday life, everything changed. Their parenting, their, being married, they're in their relationships, their work. And that really excited me because it wasn't just unpacking the trauma, it was unpacking everything that no longer supported them. So I started teaching people how to work with their past experiences so they no longer cause them to react in certain ways in today. Because all we have is today.
And you saved a lot of people from illnesses they would have had. Because I'm seeing now the end result, because you weren't around, I wasn't around to know people before their so-called diagnosis.
Right.
And now I have a lot of cancer patients and other people with all these diseases.
Fibromyalgia.
That's, chronic fatigue, all that in that whole, any autoimmune, we know where that stemmed from. And the problem with, I just want to say you've been a blessing and you touched so many lives.
No, well, thank you.
You've touched so many lives. So those people will probably never be my patient.
Which is sad, but hopefully they'll listen to your show a lot because they'll get to know you. Not
no,
only
so
sad
many
in the
more.
sense they didn't get to meet you.
Yeah, there's so many more that I am, and I'm hoping that this show will help them because you're going to be giving some powerful tools for people during this show. So please, everyone, get your pen and paper ready. And if you missed the show, please go back to our YouTube channel, NuWellness TV with Dr. Lee, on our YouTube channel and watch it later. Share it with your friends and families because it's so important that we unpack those that emotional suitcase. I mean, it's full for so many people.
And they've been filling it since their childhood. Like one of the things that I teach is that when an overwhelming situation happens, our natural response is to push it down, push it away. We don't want to feel it because we haven't been taught from the time we were little to feel our feelings. What did we hear? Stop, wipe that look off your face, stop that crying or I'll give you a reason to cry.
Oh, yes.
All of those type of comments.
I remember some of those.
So you, as a small child, I even can watch people when we're out and they start yelling at their child, their small child, they'll quit crying and they close down because they're stuffing. And then what happens is that comes up later when someone else speaks to us or looks at us a certain way. And I'll see this in relationships that I coach with, that if they feel like that's their way their father talked to them or their mother, then they react as if it is their father or mother or another adult that told them to stop crying, don't feel. So we haven't really been taught as a society to be comfortable with uncomfortable feelings. Yeah. We've been taught don't feel them, so they get stuffed back there. And then it's
amazing you said that because it brings back to memory some things that I had seen in my own family, and I see where they are now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And one of the things that I teach is that it's like, our whole life we're pushing down these beach balls of emotional popcorn, trying to keep them underwater so no one sees we're broken. I used to say one of my mantras was look good, smell good, be good, don't look broke. Don't be broke. And that was financially, physically, look-wise, everything. So I was always pushing these beach balls down. And then eventually you get too tired or too many beach balls. And then they come flying up. And that's why I had, for a while, a lot of clients that were in their 60s. And they said, I'm successful. I've had a great life. I've had all these things. But why is my life sucking now? Or I have tons of anxiety. I can't leave the house. It's because they finally didn't. Those beach balls had to come to the surface. So we worked with abandonment issues, all kinds of things. And I was amazed for a while because I had like a lot of 60, 65-year-old women and some men. And I realized, it's because they've accomplished all the other, stressors in their life. And now these things are coming forward.
Yes.
And, but when we drag the things from the past, which are really unmet expectations too, which I've really been discovering working with people, is if you continually have your expectations about life not met, what happens is you start seeing your life as if...
I want to stop you for a minute, only a minute. You know why? Because you're saying so many great things. Slow it down a little bit.
Yeah, I do talk fast.
I know.
I do. Shouldn't have that second cup of coffee.
I know. Just a little bit. Because you can listen to the show over and over, which is good because it is live right now, but you can go back and still listen to it again. But just a little bit, slow it down.
Yes,
okay?
I have a habit of doing
that.
But
you're good. I mean, this is a good point.
I want to fit everything in.
And you're going to get it in.
I'm going to get it in.
Or we're going to do a part two.
Right, we could do a part two.
Get it.
That's
we're
true.
Get it in.
I'm open.
Yes.
But those unmet expectations, what happens is when we have a lot of them, we then create beliefs and truths about the rest of our life, about people, places, and things. And then what happens is that's how we see things in the now. So now we're reacting to a past unmet expectation, disappointment, frustration. And then we also project those unmet expectations into the future as a negative outcome. So we go into these situations with a negative energy about it, attitude, story, and then we react. We're not even reacting to what is unfolding right here, right now.
Yes.
And that's the power of unpacking it, because then it no longer has the power to steal your nows. And that's what I find, like when I work with hospice patients, for instance, and their family and their caregivers, is they're so wrapped up about the story of the past and what they're fearing in the future, they can no longer be with the person who's only going to be here so much more time, and they can't be in what I call the juiciness, you know.
And I see that so much,
Yes.
so often. So often.
And it's like musicians talk about the sweet spot in a room. We miss being in that sweet spot where we're hearing every bit of the musicality and the tone of our life.
Yes.
Because we're so concerned pushing that future and dragging that past that we're not right here. And the gold is here. This is the only place we have any power in how we respond to each situation, person, place, or thing.
Yes.
So when we're unpacking, what I encourage people to do is take their life in 5, 10, 15-year, 5-year spans through their entire life of any memories that pop up and give them a trigger or a charge or a reactive feeling, brings them to tears or anger. And I have them list them when I'm working with my clients. And I have them take about a week and a half, 2 weeks, however long it takes them to do it. And then we take each one and we resolve it so it no longer has power to color their future and their present. And that's like so powerful.
Oh,
It changes the way they see life. You know, for instance, I grew up hearing a lot, you know, about, well, man must have created this bathroom. My mom was notorious for saying that because you wash your hands in the soap here and the towels are way over here. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but she'd always say, "Oh, man must have done it. A woman would have thought of that."
Yeah.
So I had an idea about men growing up. It became a belief, so much of a belief that it became a truth, like the sun rises and sets.
Of course.
And that's why it's powerful to look at what beliefs we packed that someone else gave us, conditioning, that someone else gave us about how we perceive the world.
Exactly.
So as I have them go through that, we process each one of them. Not like what I used to call the biblical gnashing of teeth and ripping at clothes, re-experiencing it stuff.
Yeah.
But in a very calm, neutral way, they're able to actually resolve the emotional upset, disappointment, frustration to the point where it no longer colors the rest of their life and their perspective.
That's very powerful. And, you know, since you've stated that, why don't you give me a case study of a couple? Because a lot of people are going to kind of, you know, like a puzzle. They're going to fit in some of those case studies.
Right. And
I love case studies because we kind of see ourselves there. And so, so that's why that's happening. So maybe from beginning, from the time they walked in to the time they walked out. Well,
one of them that's very... There's so many. But one was a specific couple that came in and they were arguing. In fact, they were sent to me on Fort Hood when I had my office there and was training emotional self-sufficiency. And they came in, they'd been in had a lot of issues, and their command said, you know, you need to work on this because it was messing with his work and creating all kinds of problems for the soldiers. So they came in and I listened to them for a little bit, asked a few questions, and realized right away I had a firstborn, the man, and the husband, and the wife was a baby of the family. And I said, and I bet you had all of the brothers, and you were in charge of all your siblings, to the husband. And they were like, yeah, how'd you know? And I said, oh, well, I could tell. And let me ask you a couple questions. When you were in charge, he had a very verbally abusive father. He was in charge of all his siblings.
Okay.
So what happened was his father would yell at him, you keep them in line. If they mess up, you get in trouble. So he would yell, then practice his dad's teaching to the younger ones to keep him in line so he wouldn't get in trouble.
Right.
So he found out that he could control everybody by yelling and being angry about everything. And then the daughter, the wife, grew up as the baby of a family, and she was the only girl. So all she had to do was snivel or, you know, wiggle her lip a little bit, and start to cry, and her dad would do anything for her, and so would her brothers. So she found out real quick how to change a situation to work for her.
Yes.
Now you put these two, and they get done with their honeymoon phase, and now the veneer is peeled back, and the real people are there. And anytime anything went wrong with their kids or whatever was going on, he would start yelling to get control, and she would start quivering her lip or crying, and he would yell more to keep her in line. Totally not knowing they were doing this, totally unaware that it was conditioning from their childhood. And I constantly tell people, whatever coping skills you developed during your childhood to survive your family don't really work in your adult life,
No,
in your business,
not
in
at
your
all.
relationship, things like that. So once they became aware of what they were doing, they could, and then I walked them through some of the processes to resolve the things from their past. What was fascinating is they were able to communicate on an entirely different level than they ever had before. They could be totally what I call gut level, but honest with each other without fearing the tears or the anger to try to fix it.
Yes, because actually at that point you know why I'm this way.
Right.
You know why I'm reacting this way. And then you can go back, and which is so powerful because I do a lot of that with the patients when they come to the clinic to see kind of what's going on with them health-wise, because we know for every symptom or per se there is an emotional link.
Right.
There is an emotional link.
that
So I deal with that too. And actually I developed a meditation tape as well.
Ooh,
and it's entitled Detox the Mind and the Body Will Heal.
Right.
Which we'll show it next time.
Right. No, that's wonderful.
So it's the whole meditation. And actually, I designed it initially as we start with ourselves first. Because I went through the whole childhood, this, that.
Right.
And a lot of people know my history. I'm not going to go through that today. But so we start with ourselves. And this is what helped me through my journey. I knew why I did not want to accept money from men. I knew why this happened. But it took me a long time to get to that point, why I would have those type of issues.
Right.
You know, so.
And it's the stories and the things that we hear as we're growing up that become truth, like the sun rises and sets. And, you know, I'm thinking of, I had a young soldier come in because he flipped off a command and he'd gotten in a lot of trouble from his anger. So he was sent to my office, and he was sitting there very angry that he was sent there because he thought he was going to be shrinked, he kept saying. And I said, no, I'm not going to shrink you. So I asked him a couple questions, and I said, well, what would you like to work on today? He goes, I want to work on when my mom died. And I was so surprised because I thought he'd want to work on some of the things that were creating all this anger at work. And I said, okay, when did that happen? 8 years old. And we went through the processes of, it's called the tight and confined and the engulfing exercises I teach. And we resolved, because he took him right back to when he
Say that again.
There's the tight and confined exercise.
Okay.
And I'll explain first. I'll back up a little bit.
Okay.
When we feel an emotion that is overriding so that we're reacting instead of responding to the moment, and it's everything but happy, peaceful, or neutral is what we want to work on. If we have incredible fear, anxiety, anger, frustration, and it's bubbling forth and getting in the way of responding in the moment, then that's a trigger typically from the past or something that's unmet expectation in the right here, or something we're worried about in the future. And typically we feel it somewhere in our body because our bodies are emotional brain.
Oh, yes.
So people will feel it in their chest, tight and confined, like an elephant sitting on it. And even in our language, we talk about it. My heart almost pounded out of my chest when I heard about my grandmother. My stomach was in knots when I saw 9/11 unfold. We talk about these emotional things in emotional ways, but we don't know what to do with it other than push it aside or ignore it. So when emotions show up, they're either very tight and confined, knots, things like that, even in our neck or our back, or we feel very engulfed in anxiety or stress, like we feel a bubble. And so these two exercises, actually through guided imagery, will reduce and resolve the tight and confined, or how if they feel it as an engulfing bubble. Because sometimes that bubble of anxiety can fill your whole world. You wake up and you're just so worried, and you don't know what you're going to do. You try exercise, you call a friend and you vent, but you still feel like you have this bubble of
And then they have
anxiety.
panic attacks.
Yeah, and then it goes right into panic attacks.
And then they go from there and they place on medication.
Right.
For the
and
panic
so now
attacks.
What are they doing? They're just holding it down and keeping it at bay.
Nothing is resolved.
Right. And it's just medicating it. And so when this particular soldier was talking about his mom, she died when he was 8, unexpected. And then as we were reducing and resolving through the tight and confined exercises till he felt neutral and at peace from inside. And they always get this huge smile, and I love watching. And as I was guiding him through it, he said, oh my gosh, he had his eyes closed and this beautiful look on his face. He says, my mom didn't want to leave me. I still choke up because it was so sweet. My mom never wanted to leave me alone. I was just a little 8-year-old boy. It broke her heart to leave me. And he said, I always thought she did it on purpose. So I decided never to think about her again or feel her again, because I was so angry with her at 8 years old. See why he's had continual anger issues?
Oh, my goodness.
And he said, oh, my gosh, I can see my mom, and tears are just coming down. He goes, can you feel it? I still get goosebumps because I can feel the love in the room. He goes, can you feel her? And he said, I've never been able to picture my mom in my mind unless I look at a picture of her. He said, but right now she's pushing me on a swing. I have all these memories coming forward because at 8 years old, he decided not to feel or think about his mom in a loving way because she left him on purpose. And he felt all this. And then the beautiful thing about it was it totally changed the way he showed up.
We're going to need
after
tissue
that.
here after a while.
And he left just on this, oh my gosh, I see why I've done all and made all these choices in his relationships, in his work. And he drove home and he called me and texted me that evening a couple times saying, oh my gosh, I'm like a different person. And he said, I want to learn more how to do this with anything else that'll keep me from living my juicy now, as you talk about, and my
Juicy now, yes.
future I deserve.
Yes.
Because if he had continued with that choice at 8 years old, as the sun rises and sets, his mom left him on purpose. That was a truth to him. Till he was able to resolve and reduce that and get the real truth that this woman loved him so much, the rest of his life was going to be destruction and destroyed relationships. And that's just one of those that
Yeah. And you know, I hear that, I've heard that from people and patients. So the story, he's not alone. It's just that bringing it out and bringing it forward. You know, and my prayer today, my heart's prayer is that things that are mentioned here today, it will serve you. So you no longer have to be supported by these things that are holding you back in your life.
Right.
Because it's too many people. I know I've been there myself. You know, I almost wanted to just lock myself away because of things that were happening in my life, and some of it had to do with childhood. And until you can know and break through, and luckily I had some good friends around me and had a really great mom, you know, but I felt that way too about my father, who was still living. We just didn't have a relationship. And we didn't have a relationship until like, I think the year before he died. We had a relationship, and it was probably less than a year. And it was a wonderful relationship because that's what I felt, some of that.
Right.
Because the way he departed or divorced my mom, they divorced each other. But, you know, it will put you in those frame of minds.
Right. And then
it really will.
When I work with single people and they tell me, well, you know, all men are jerks or all women are just after your money. So we peel back and we find when that truth became, that belief became a truth. And then we resolve the hold on them so that they can be in the moment and be with people and not judge them and be able to really receive. Because you tend to collect what you reject, you know, what you're trying to push away.
Say that again.
You tend to collect what you reject.
Okay.
So, you know, when I hear someone saying, you know, that they can't seem to find a man who's can communicate or is warm-hearted or emotionally available or whatever it is. And I asked him, I said, so what is your rejection list? What is it you don't want? And they tell me, and then I'm like, sorry, that's going to keep coming until you work through why you have that belief about all men or lots of men. And it's funny when they don't have these pre-created, structured, in cement expectations of how life is going to show up.
Yes.
They're really surprised at how things that appear in the present, like, oh, that's the worst thing, have turned into these amazing gifts. You know, I call it finding the gift in the gunk, the opportunity in the obstacle. If all you're looking at is the obstacle, you'll never see the opportunity. Right.
Because I have very dear friends that are wanting to be in relationships and having a hard time, men and women, finding someone that they want to be with.
Right.
And I'm going to let you elaborate a little on that.
I'll tell you a funny story. Just popped in my head. I went and saw this Zen person, or oh gosh, what's this called? When you clear a room and you have the bed. The words escape me. It's Japanese feng shui. She's a feng shui specialist. And she was talking about all these things that people leave cupboards open, do it because they don't finish projects, things like that. And then she was talking about relationships and you feng shuiing your house. And, you know, this woman wanted to be married, but she kept parking in the middle of her driveway instead of the side. And she said, well, you keep doing that, you're blocking male energy from coming into your life. So I started laughing and I said, uh-oh. And she said, what? And I said, well, this is when I lived in San Juan Capistrano. I said, I'll try on clothes and go, try it later, try it later, and put it away later. I had piles, I hate to admit, like 3 feet high, and my daughter can attest to this, of clothes on that side of the bed, the other side of the bed. And she said, so you always leave yours open, huh? And she goes, you're not going to have a man in your life if you keep doing that. So which I thought was really funny.
Oh, gee, maybe that's my problem. I never
So
thought
I
about
started
that.
hanging up my clothes, but then I realized I
Uh-huh.
really didn't want to have a relationship because I'd been married and then in a relationship for a while, and I thought I just want to do eat, pray, no love. I want to just do my passion. I want to do my purpose, which was ride bicycles with the troops across the country.
I have said that.
I'm doing eat, pray, no love, no love. I don't want a relationship, It's totally about that. And then
I think I just had a talk about that with Jarvis, didn't I? Last Wednesday.
well, I figured I'd give 3 years
Yeah.
of just not being a girlfriend, not being a wife, and just be me. Because I really found my passion with emotional self-sufficiency and my purpose.
Yes.
And I just want to do it. I don't want anybody to tell me how to do it, whatever. I just want to be me. So I went on all these bike rides, but the first ride I go on, I meet this amazing, first I see a motorcycle out in front of the hotel. We're riding bicycles and motorcycles, escort, keep us safe. It was in Texas, and I see this beautiful motorcycle, and I said, whoa, nice bike. So I said, nice bike, and I walked by. Well, he looked up and was like, who's the blonde? And because he hadn't seen me on the ride the day before, I flew in late. Turns out we end up on the same bus to Fort Hood and back when we were going for a dinner. There's no seats on the bus, but next to me when he got on, and then when we got off after the dinner, there was no seat left on the bus except next to him, 4 buses. And so we ended up meeting and falling in love, and all because I said, nice bike. And then we were married 9 months later. So I think some of it is when you don't have this intention, it's really an expectation. And you don't set it in cement that it has to happen, but you be more open and you clear the stuff in you that is inhibiting that person coming. Because if I'd been who I'd been before, we wouldn't have lasted at all.
And this is this wonderful, beautiful, handsome man who is
right over there,
who is taping us live outside of Jarvis.
Right, and he's so supportive and gets what I do, and he's everything I wanted. Plus, I did a list of, what didn't work in my past relationships, and I owned what I did that didn't work.
Exactly.
It's not all about them because you brought them into your life, so you need to figure out what lesson they were teaching you about yourself. So I made a list of all the things that didn't work in my past relationships, me included. Really worked on that, which is work. I use it every day. And then I made a list of what it is I do want. And then I always say, and more, because God knows more of what I need than I do.
Exactly.
God, universe, I don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah.
But, so then I did that and just... however you see her or him. So then I just had this list, and I'll tell you, everything I had on there that I was looking for and who I wanted to be in the relationship. It wasn't just about him, but who was I wanted to be. And it's been amazing. Like, people look at us and they're like, wow, you guys been married for years. And we're like, no, just, 2012.
2012.
So, and we're both have the same heart about the troops and their families and creating healing everywhere we go. That's our goal.
My goodness.
We
It's so
live for
wonderful.
that.
And you guys just seem, it seemed like you've been together for years.
Yeah, that's what
Only
everybody
because you just seem as one. Not independently. Yes, you're independent people, but the love.
Right.
You heard people have heard this in the past, like walking into a room and it's like the tension is so thick you can cut it with a knife.
Right.
And when you walk into a room with you and your husband, like I did today here in the studio, you just feel the love.
Oh,
You feel
thank you.
the warmth.
That's our goal.
That's what happens when I see people. When they come in, I'm like, oh God, this person is sick and I don't even feel the love there. And the person is ill. What is this? You have to kind of look at that. How are they going to become well in a toxic relationship?
Yeah.
How?
And you said about the tension, cutting it with a knife. Like when people tell me, oh, there's no energy issues and things. I said, oh, really? I said, you ever walk in a room or you're in a room and you feel your boss or someone come in that's really angry? You don't even have to turn around and you feel that anger. So don't tell me that you don't emotionally feel. Like some people tell me they're numb. So then we work on the numbness. I have them close their eyes and tell me where you feel the most numb. And they're like, what? I said, just do this. And it's interesting. They find the spot, then they find the most intense spot, and then they just focus with their eyes closed. And as they do, the most amazing thing happens. It will just start either shrinking or break apart, and then I just have them keep focusing on each piece of the numbness, if it shows up that way, or tight and confined. And pretty soon it's clear. And then I ask them, so what do you see now? And then they have this amazing aha. And then they realize,
Yes.
they get this truth. Sometimes
Yes.
they share it with me, sometimes they don't. The engulfing exercise, sometimes when we feel like it's tight, it'll actually, if we allow it, because we're so used to holding those beach balls down, with their eyes closed, they're going to actually open. It just opens all the way up, almost engulfs their whole world. And I always tell them, you're aware that you're in that, right? And they're like, yeah. And I said, so it can engulf your whole world, or you'd be in a coma. And I said, there's a little bit just outside. And when they start getting outside into the clear space, what's really interesting is that engulfing starts shrinking and getting smaller or clearer, changes colors, however they see it. And then they find out they're out in this space that is just unending, infinite, and it's peace. And I always ask them, so what does it feel like out there outside the bubble? It's peaceful, it's calm. I said, breathe that in. That is available to us 24/7. We've just been trained and conditioned to believe that stress is every day, and that all this crap that happened in my past has to color and change who I am on a daily basis. And if I'm pissed off, I have to stay pissed off. No. There's this wonderful, peaceful place, but we just don't know how to access it. So I teach them how to get into that quiet space to the point where they actually practice it. And pretty soon they're like me, we're 24/7. I'm pretty peaceful. Sometimes I get a little agitated, and I know I'm either find something in my overnight bag. Used to be a freight train with multiple cars. But now it's down to like an overnight bag. And I know that there's some little from my past that's still able to cause me to be anything other than happy, peaceful, or neutral, or righteous anger. There's a space for that too. But, or I'm fearing something in the future because I've created a story about it.
Yes.
Or I'm projecting one of my unmet expectations onto the future as if that's the truth. And the beautiful thing is when you're able to either resolve the engulfing or the tight and confined and come up with what is true in the moment. Like I had one woman who every time she was with her mom, she'd come home and she would break out in hives and have terrible diarrhea, like to the point where she couldn't leave her house. And she'd be fine with her mom, but the minute she got out of her mom's in front of her, she would just be sicker than a dog. So she came to me, and because her mom was very critical and just pretty toxic.
Yes.
And so when I worked with her, she was very engulfed by all this anxiety of going to see her mom again. So I said, let's go out into the quiet space, go as far as it can. So there's a line or it fades away, but get out into that quiet. So she gets out in the quiet. She feels very peaceful. And I have her look back at the bubble, which was dark and just hideous. And so she kept just focusing and enjoying the peaceful place. And as she did, I had her look back at the bubble, and it had changed. It was clear, and it was smaller, and then to the point where it's gone. And I said, okay, now I want you to think about visiting your mom and about your mom. And she just, again, teared up and said, my mom doesn't hate me. This is the only way she knows how to love me. This is her truth.
Okay.
And this is how she was conditioned to believe that if I get my daughter in a box and she dresses this way, loses enough weight, she'll be finally happy. Obviously, it didn't work for her mother. But so what she discovered is all her criticism was actually her language of love. So she said, oh my gosh, all these years I thought my mom hated me, and she just loved me so much, and this is the only way she knows how. I said, so now think about going to see your mom. I feel really peaceful. I'm okay with that because I can now love her as she is without the expectation of her being any different than she's been showing up the last 45 years.
Yes.
And the beautiful thing, she went and saw her mom, thoroughly enjoyed it. Her mom's energy changed, and she actually complimented her. And let me tell you this little truth. When we hold a teenager or a spouse or someone in a certain way, because they've showed this way up all this time, we always hold them in this bubble, they will react that way.
They certainly will.
When we start to change the way we perceive them and how we love them and how we see much more for them, but it's not an expectation, like a hard knuckle, and we start loving them where they're at, exactly how they are, all of a sudden that hardness, that bubble starts evaporating, and they show up differently because our energy changed. And so her mom was actually able to compliment her. She came home, no hives, no diarrhea, nothing. It was phenomenal.
I know it was.
When I work with mothers of teens or unhappy spouses, I'll say on your way home, what do you imagine before you go home to your teenage son or daughter? Oh, they want to have taken the trash out. They want to have done this. They're just, they're going to be grunt answers. They're just going to be all this. And I said, really? That's what you think about? And you anticipate that when you come in through that door, your child is going to embrace that? I said, you've already set into motion the first argument.
Yes.
So when I have them then focus on the day they were born, their beautiful face, funny stories, how much they love, all the things about their child they still love. And then I have them focus on that. And when they walk in, there is this, not this anger of expectation, anger shield. It's now this openness. And it's changed lives. I mean,
and people, if they knew this and had, these type of tools, because there's so many, dysfunctional families.
No, they're all normal. They're normally dysfunctional.
Well, normally. I started to almost say something like that because, it happens all. And actually, I didn't know that I had a dysfunctional family. I thought everything was cool until something happened, and I stayed with one of my sisters. And I'm like,
but
I don't live in a family like this. This is not my family. So, I'm really blessed that we had a chance to really unveil what was happening, why that was going on. Because I always thought it was great until I stayed.
Whoops.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, let me see where this is coming from.
Right.
I need to know where this is coming from. So, actually, I set my sister down and I had a long talk with her, and then I found out. So I said, well, I have to accept what she said, because I asked for it and she told me. So I said, okay, I accept what you say. Yeah. But it was, at the time, it was just very painful.
Right.
And the case was, I was in the hospital and I had been in a coma and in critical care for 30 days.
Oh, wow.
And she lives in the city and she never came to see me.
Wow.
So that didn't set well with me. I was like, why? All those, and it took me years to bring it up to her. But I know it left me feeling an uncomfortable feeling toward her.
Right.
Until I set her down and I said, well, we're going to meditate and we're going to pray first. Then I want to know. I want to know why. And then she shared with me of what she experienced with someone passing.
Oh.
And she never wanted to see that again. And they told her I looked like I was near death door. So that's why. So we embraced, and it brought our relationship even closer. And and working things out. But when you don't know these things, and you don't have the tool of someone like yourself to really sit you down and say, look, let's just do this. And why is it? Let's just go back to relationships. Okay, because why did we? My first husband was similar. We choose people like our father.
Often,
who was disconnected, never there. The whole 9 yards, and I was never there. At a 7-week period, he was never there. So maybe 2 or 3 nights.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then I said, so I had to learn a lesson, but there was some things too that I brought into that relationship. That, in all honesty, I had to go and tell him, sit him down after the divorce, and tell him and explain to him why.
Right.
Yeah. So I think when we could be authentic in relationships and tell people, and not just put all the blame on some other people, which I don't see how adultery comes in there, though. I really don't. But anyway, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, we'll have a long talk about that one, actually.
A long talk about that. Yeah. But still, there were some things on my end. So I had to come through and, say this is, but I was 18.
Right.
I mean,
we call that the young and dumb stage.
Yeah, what did I know?
I was 19.
I was ready to move out of my mother's house. So.
Right.
Yeah, so that was one of those. And a lot of people have married and got in a relationship because they were ready to make an exit from home.
Right.
And a lot of men have married women because they were forced into the marriage because the person became pregnant.
Right.
And that didn't set well for the whole relationship for years and years and years to come. Yeah.
Right. No, that brings a lot of baggage and regret and resentment. And, with relationships, one of the tools that I use with relationships is I have, because I had a lot of couples sent to me on Fort Hood because of different challenges with military life. It's very stressful.
Yes.
And also kids because of all the deployments. The suicide rate with children in the military is going.
Really?
Yeah. Of all the deployments, also spouses, they're finally tracking that there's a lot of suicide. And then also, obviously, with our troops. And so they'd send couples to me, saying it's interfering with his work or her work, because sometimes it would be the soldier or they'd both be soldiers. So one of the things I do is have them list, it's called the what's working, what's not working. And this is part of the unpacking, is I'd have them write everything that doesn't work in the relationship. And you can use this with your life, your business, whatever, but I'd have them write everything that's not working in the relationship. And then what is it they do want in direct opposite of what's not working? What would it look like, feel like, and be like if it was this way, the way you want it? And juicy, like feel it. And so maybe just a sentence or a word here, argue a lot, whatever. And over here, what they'd like is, honest conversation, communication from the heart, all these things. So they'd write juicy detail here, just one or two words on the not quite right, what's not working. And then what is it you do want? Juicy detail. And then I'd have
I like the juicy detail. That's really good.
And feel it, not like white knuckle, it's got to be this way, or, it's like, this is what I would love to live into. And what's really powerful is then I'd have them come together and we would compare the lists. Okay. And then we would create a list together of what they both agreed on was not working and work through the things that maybe they didn't agree on, and then really have them focus on what it is they do want. And what was amazing is the relationships went from arguing over everything from the kids to the finances, the house, whatever, to being able to really talk through and create a whole different relationship. And they'd know if it started not working that they were practicing these old behaviors and come back and look here. And they used to have a joke called the BB box, and they came up with it on their own, and they had a box in their house that if they came across a conversation they couldn't do without getting reactive, well, one of them, whoever is the most sanest in the argument at that time, would then drop the white flag, or they'd say BB box time, and they'd write down the issue they couldn't communicate, put it in in the box.
Yes.
And then they would bring it to me to help them process and walk through what was difficult.
Yes.
So we used to kid that if we ever made product, it would be called the BB box. And then one of my clients said, we need to make a bracelet that says, what would BB say? Because often I'll get these calls or texts from people I've worked with, and they'll say, oh, I had this situation, a car key broke off in her car, and she was stressing about money and all these different things. And then she said, I took a big deep breath, and I asked myself, what would BB do? Which was so funny. So, and often it's just taking that break.
Yes.
That quick, when you start feeling reactive and bubbling forth, instead of flipping right to anger or whatever the emotion is to take that deep breath and just ask yourself, what's the next best thing I can do? What's the thing with clarity? Because anger and frustration and all those emotions and anxiety cloud out creativity. You can't come up with a powerful solution if you're caught in a story about the problem.
Exactly.
And Einstein talks about it. You can't solve a problem with the same issue that created it. Energy that created it. You have to come from a creative space.
Yes, most definitely.
So when people take that big break and that 5 or 10 breaths and then bring it in, and then I'll have them, if there's a trigger somewhere, have them do because the exercises are so quick, they can do it in the grocery store. Like I've had soldiers where a pallet dropped and they wanted to hit the deck. So they just look at the freezer, drop their glasses, and just stand there and do the work with their eyes closed. It takes just a few seconds to bring themselves back to neutral. And when you can be neutral, then you can talk about anything.
Yes.
Because you don't have a story. And see, stories are the worst thing in relationships, is that creating the stories that are based from our unmet expectations and our conditioning from our past and projecting it into our now or our future.
Yes.
I had a friend recently with the wedding, and she was stressing out, and she was texting me, I'm so stressed, this and that and that. And I said, whoa, pump the brakes, girl. Listen to the stories you're running in your head. It's all a story till it unfolds right here, right now. So why not spend this time, the 2 weeks before the wedding, focused on the stories you want to unfold, and then take the action to create that. Why even give 2 seconds of a story that does not serve and support you?
Exactly.
And she said, wow, thanks for the coaching. It changed her whole 2 weeks. And that's the thing I don't think people understand, is how much time is robbed by past stories and future fears, and we don't get to be in this juiciest moment possible.
Right.
And this is the only place we have power to create what it is we do want.
Yes.
And if we're still running our life from an old filter, we are missing out.
Yeah.
And, when I catch myself creating a story, I say, okay, is that the story I want?
Yes.
Is that the outcome I want? Some outcomes you can't change, but why waste the time between them?
Exactly. And we're about to run out of time.
Oh, wow, that went fast.
I know. But I want you to tell, you have said so much, and you can't sum it up. I know it's just too much to sum up in, say, a minute or so. But what would be some of your parting words that you would leave with my audience? And look at them directly in their eyes right now.
Okay.
Tell them.
If you really want to create that change in your relationships, in yourself, so that on a daily basis you're coming from either neutral or peaceful, and past angers, frustration, anxiety, worry is no longer just a constant companion, what I ask you to do is really check in with the stories you run. And I encourage my clients to write the stories out and then write the absolute opposite of what they want. And that's where they spend time in their mind, is creating that story. The other thing is, with unpacking your suitcase that no longer serves you, your emotional suitcase, is write a list of all the things that trigger you, that cause you to lose time right here, right now. And then my book will be coming out next year. You can read it there.
Okay.
But the thing is to really be in touch with how you're reacting and question your stories. Is this true? Do I want it to be true? How can I feel or think about this situation, person, place, or thing differently, so I can come from neutral? Because neutral is where the power is. Love, that's where the love dwells. And love, if you're angry, you can't be in love. You can't come from the action of love unless it's what I call righteous anger, but that's a whole nother story. Mm-hmm. But create that positive story that you want to unfold, and then take all the action to create it. It's not sitting around, sucking your thumb, focusing on positive stories. It's actually about taking the action. And
definitely the action. Got
to have the action.
Mm-hmm.
So, but find out what stories are running in your head. You get to choose which ones come in for a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and dwell in your mind, or you give that space to ones that serve and support you. And that's powerful.
Yes, it is.
So I encourage you to do that on a daily basis. And when you hear a negative story or you start feeling agitated, ask, what am I thinking? Because what you're focusing on is creating the emotional feelings.
Yes, it is.
So I always say, your thoughts fuel your feelings create your action. So don't let those thoughts no longer serve you. Mm-hmm. Take over.
Ditto. It's exactly what I would have said. I want to thank you so much. And thank you so much, Barbara, for being a guest today.
Thank you.
Ms. Crawford. You're just wonderful.
I love you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I look forward to it.
And I want to thank everyone for tuning in.
Yes,
and visit our website, NuWellnessHealthcare.com. Have any questions, please give us a call at 310-419-4300. That is our clinic number. And again, thank you all for listening. As I always end my show, repeat after me. I am so grateful that I am a magnet for miracles. That's why she was here today.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Tune in next Wednesday.
Join us every Wednesday live at 11 a.m. for NuWellness TV with Dr. Lee. Remember, healthy mind, healthy body.